Hello everybody, Mike Brills from Brills Woodworks. Thank you for joining me back on my channel. I do appreciate it. So I am now in full-blown show prep season for 2025, and one of the big things I got to do is make a bunch of birdhouses. And with that, I've got all these segmented rings that I've made up. I've also got bodies back behind me that I'm going to start working on. But this video is not going to be about my birdhouses. That's coming up, so keep watching. This video is going to be about how to turn a basic segmented bowl. I'm not using this stuff, but I'm going to show you how to do it start to finish. So let's get going. Okay, so several years back, I downloaded a software called Segment Pro. It's probably 4 or 5 years ago. I'm not exactly sure. Any rate, I've used it from time to time. It's pretty decent. They must not sell a ton of them because it's not super refined, but it does okay. But you can design it. It's got a place on the screen where you can design your bowl, your vase, whatever. You tell it how many segments you want and how high you want your rings to be, and it will basically calculate everything out for you. And you can add the species and all that, and you know, make these make the bowl as you can gussy it up as much as you want. At any rate, today I'm going to make a basic 12 segment ring bowl, and it's going to use a total of 10 rings, and I'm just going to show you how to do it. And I'll let you know that you don't need to buy software. There is tons of free applications, websites you can go to where you can calculate out all the stuff you need for segmented turning. You know, you can put in how big your rings are supposed to be. You'll have to draw it out yourself and have it help you calculate what you need for what size rings you need and how big your segments have to be. But if you want to get, you know, more into the weeds, you can look, see if Segment Pro is still there, and if it is, you know, go give it a go. But with that said, I'm going to start on my basic 14-inch salad bowl. So let's get going. So this one defaulted to walnut, but that's okay. I'm going to use maple on this because I've got it right here. And I'm going to start, it starts out with ring 1, which is actually just a disc. So I'll end up turning a disc that will be 5.2 inches in diameter. But when we get started with the segments, we're going to move down to ring number 2, and the board width will need to be 2.55 inches, and I need it to be 17 inches long. So what I'll end up doing is I'll probably go 2 3/4 for my width, and I'll probably make it about 18. And I'm going to run through each one of these. Ring number 3, 2.21, so 2 1/4, and 23 inches long. And I'm just going to run through all of these as I go down and make each one of them separately. All right, I've gone through and cut all the boards that I need for each and every one of my rings. So now I'm going to set up with my wedgie sled and get my short fence on here, and we'll get started cutting these rings. I have my throat plate on here with my little deflector, so once the segments get cut, they fall off and go to the side and don't get caught up in the blade. I got my accurate 12 segment setup template, and I'm going to check it. That one's nice. And that one is good, so we're good to go. All right, again, I'm going to start at ring 10, and I'm going to work backwards. So first thing I got to do is I got to cut the angle so I can get my measurement. So on my spreadsheet, you'll see SEL, segment length, and that's what I need for this. And this one needs to be 3.757 inches. off fence over where I'm holding it. It's now on the outside of the blade so that it is the proper length. Otherwise it would be, you know, 1/8 of an inch too narrow if I put the mark on the left side. But I'm good to go. It's looking pretty good. All right, that's ring number 10. I'm going to put these aside and I'll bring it down to the measurement for ring number 9. Oh, got to be the same size. That makes it easy. So from this point on, I'm going to do each and every ring. I check out the length that I need on the spreadsheet, mark them out, and do each one of them. I've got all the lumber already pre-cut to the right width and the right length that I need. So it's time to start gluing up the rings. I've got a piece of 150 grit sandpaper right next to me, and I'm taking each piece and taking off the burrs. Now I take 2 pieces and I hold them in opposite directions. I dip one of them into the glue. I rub the other one against it because I'll have plenty of glue to work it out. And I hold them in opposite directions and I work in a circle till I go all the way around. And whatever rings that I can use elastic bands, I do. And those rings that I can't, I use big hose clamps. Now I'll run through all the rest of the rings till I get them all glued up, and I'll let them stand overnight. So I glued up some maple strips into a square, actually more of a rectangle. Now I'm turning it into that disc, which will be basically ring number 1. And I'm just getting it to a perfect circle, and then I will take it over to the gluing jig. All right, so the next step is to sand all these top and bottom so we can then glue it up into a stack. And I will add the top plug on top of it. I drill a hole into the end of them. You don't have to do that. You can glue up the stack and then glue it to the bottom piece on the lathe itself. I choose to do it all in one piece like this, and I just cut a plug and I put it in there after the fact, and I think it gives a nice little visual detail as well. So there are several methods you can use to do the sanding. So the first method I ever used was this disc sander. I had taken the table off so I had the full 12 inches to use. That limited me to sanding 12-inch discs, but that was just the way it was. So I decided to change what I did. You could mount them in your cold jaws and then skim over it with your bull gouge or a scraper and then sand. When I sand like that, I use a board like this that's got self-adhesive tape on it, sandpaper, and I hold it on so it sands the whole thing nice and flat. That's very important. They got to be flat. You can't have this angling in or anything like that, or else it won't make good adhesion when you glue each of the rings on top of each other. I've seen people do other methods where they would glue a sacrificial piece of plywood, put it on mount it to the lathe with a faceplate, and then sand one side and then turn it around and glue them one ring at a time onto the bowl on a stack on the lathe itself, using the tailstock as a vise. I mean, that is totally doable if you don't have the ability to have the tools to do it any other way. That is totally doable. It's very time consuming, but you can do it. The method I'm going to use is my drum sander. You know, a lot of people don't have the ability to get that, but I was able to get it, and so that's the method I'm going to use. So I have my Jet 2244 drum sander here. I just put fresh 60 grit paper on it, and I'm going to run all my rings through and get them all nice and flat. Here we go. I picked this sander up from a friend. I got a pretty good deal on it. You might be able to see that I actually have damaged my conveyor belt. I've got a replacement. I just haven't put it on yet, but it still works good enough to get this job done. And I will also use it with all of my birdhouse rings probably very soon, and I'll use it until I can't use it anymore. This sander is a huge step up from the Grizzly 458 that I previously owned. This one is far more sophisticated. All right, ready to glue these up. I've got my new glue up jig, which makes it easy by just lining it up on one of the rings. All right, I'm going to lock it in place, and I will take my measurements. And we're good. All right, so I'm going to start gluing on the other rings on top of this. All right, so I'm going to stagger my rings. We're good. All right. That's ring 10 and ring 9, and now on to ring number 8. So a bowl like this is a good place to start. It's very easy. There's only 12 segments per ring. It gives you the opportunity to hone your skills and work your way up to a more sophisticated bowl. All right, so I got this all glued up. I will come back tomorrow and I'm gonna turn it. So I like to start turning these by putting them in my coal jaws, and so that you're starting based on your largest rings, because as you glue them up, any mistakes you make in gluing gets compounded as you get closer and closer to the top and the smallest rings. All of those little mistakes you make in tiny bits on the measurements start to amplify each other, and they get most exaggerated when you get to the smallest ring. So if you simply put the smallest ring onto a faceplate and mount it so the bowl is facing out, you have a very large discrepancy with the large rings. They'll be wobbling a lot, to the point where if you try to turn out the wobble, you end up going through the side or having a bowl that's it's unusably too thin. And I'm sure some of you noticed that the hole that I made, I ended up having to make it bigger, and I used a larger plug than I was expecting, but that's all good. I have plenty of room on that smaller ring to accommodate it, and it can absorb the wobble being straightened out better than the larger rings can. So I'm now working on hollowing out the inside. So the first thing you do is you knock the top of the steps off, and after you do that, you can go back and start slowly expanding your cut until you get through all of the ridges between each and every one of the rings. Right here I'm using my robust Turner's Edge 5/8 bull gouge, and at some point you'll see I will change over to my Thompson 3/4 inch bottom bowl gouge, which really is the ticket for the bottom of these deep bowls. I once again am using my 6-inch sanding disc for the outside. It really is the ticket. Glenn Lucas taught me how to do this, and it has knocked an amazing amount of time off my sanding. So here I'm sanding the inside, and I'm using my 3-inch disc, and on both the outside and the inside I sand up to 400 grit. So you can't see it, but I am using my Trend Air Shield Pro. I do highly recommend using some kind of dust protection. So I'm moving on to finishing, and I'm using my General Finishes Wood Bowl finish. I really do like this stuff. It goes on great, and you have a lot of options with it. In this case, I'm giving it a basic coat. I'll end up doing 2 coats. You put it on, you let it sit for a few minutes, and you wipe off the excess. I do that on the inside as well as the outside, and then eventually I will do it on the bottom after I get it straightened out and take the tenon off. So I now have it turned around, it's back on my cold jaws, and it's time to take the tenon off. And I actually take off quite a bit here. I try to round out the bottom a little bit more rather than having it more of a neck on the bottom of it. I want it to just be a gentle OG to the bottom. So to finish up the bottom, I am sanding it to 400 grit, and then I will be applying 2 coats of the General Finishes Wood Bowl finish. I'll come back after the fact and add my logo on the bottom. I do it when I have a bunch of bowls and I can break out my laser and do a bunch of them at one time. Here I am adding a second coat to the inside of the bowl, and I'm doing it off lathe. So that's pretty much it, and I think it's a project that anyone who really wants to put their mind to it and has got a little bit of woodworking skills can handle, because segmented wood turning is only about 10% wood turning. The rest of it is woodworking. There's a lot of prep work before you ever get it onto the lathe, but it's very rewarding and I enjoy it very much. So that's it. Thank you for joining me. Please check out my other channel, Brailsford Woodworks Refinished. I take and re-edit some of my videos and add a lot more commentary and a lot more instruction. So please check it out. Thank you all for watching.